Very good. And we're live. We're live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are excited to be here with Brien Foerester, who's going to be discussing a little bit about his work and what he's going to be presenting at the conference, Higher Self Expo, which is this coming weekend. Please be sure to register, subscribe, and share this video. And if you guys have questions, please put them down below. We're going to put them up and ask for Brien. So a little bit about Brien before we get started. Brien Foerester has been exploring ancient, mysterious megalithic sites around the world for about 15 years, with an additional interest in the perplexing, elongated headed people of ancient cultures. He has been a professional totem pole carver. He has built a 62-foot catamaran with the Hawaiian people. He has published 37 books and appeared on television shows such as Ancient Alien, and has explored more than 100 countries in his quest to learn as much as he could about the mysteries that underlie megalithic stone works. You can learn more about Brien Foerster's work here at hidden Incatours.com. Excuse me, this formatting is a little funny. And I'm going to post that link below so that you can see and visit his website and look at all his amazing work. Brien, it is such an honor to have you here. I'm a big fan of your work. And please tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into this?
Well, I've been interested in ancient mysteries since I was a young child, with my family getting monthly National Geographic. So I devoured those as they came into the house, and very early fascination with ancient Egypt, and then much later on with other cultures like Peru and Bolivia and Jordan and other locations. And so the main thrust of my work, since I have a scientific background, is questioning standard academic study and history of these locations, because we see evidence that very advanced technology was used in some of these places which could not have been done by the cultures attributed to them, such as the dynastic people of Egypt or the Inca of Peru and Bolivia.
Yes, that's incredible. And so I'm from Bolivia, and I've spent some time in those ruins, and it really is truly incredible how beautifully advanced the technology was, the architecture. So what have you discovered? What would you say the connections that you see? And I have seen some of your work, your books as well, where you discuss these ancient cultures. So what do you think is the reason why those cultures no longer exist? Do you have any ideas around that?
Well, the main point is that standard academics state that certain structures were made at very specific times, but they can't back up that with actual evidence. For example, in Bolivia, they say that Tiwanaku and Pumapunku were created by the Tiwanaku culture, who were barely a Bronze Age people. And yet we see evidence of almost laser flat surfaces that could not have been done by that culture. So that's basically the work that I do, is questioning how academics can say that cultures such as the Tiwanaku could have been responsible for these works that in all likelihood could not have been replicated until the 21st century. So we're looking obviously at lost periods of history, lost cultures that standard scholarship doesn't even recognize existed.
Yes. What do you see as the common trend? Is there a trend that you're finding in these ancient cultures, these lost ancient cultures, in their architecture or in the cultures? Is there any trends that you've discovered around the world?
Well, I guess the amazing thing is that the only evidence that we have left behind are these incredible stone works. Evidence of the actual people themselves is missing. Evidence of their habitations is missing. Evidence of their actual technical evolution is missing. So that's why it's so mind-boggling. They seem to have appeared, created, and then disappeared. And then these structures were later adopted by the cultures that we understand, such as the Tiwanaku of Bolivia or the dynastic people of Egypt, for example.
Exactly. Yeah, that's amazing. We have a question from the audience saying regarding Malta. Do you know anything about the Neolithic structures on Malta?
Well, that's a great question because I was supposed to go to Malta in September, but because of
No.
COVID, that's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen until next year. But
Mhm.
obviously, some of the structures, such as the hypogeum, were not created by the local people attributed to them. So Malta is one of the most mysterious places on Earth. I look forward to going there next year. I tend to not talk about places I haven't been, but Malta, of course, is a great fascination. And so I'm looking forward to personally exploring Malta in 2022.
Wow, that's amazing. We can't wait to see what you discover there. Um, So you're going to be talking about lost ancient cultures. From all of these sites that you've seen, which one is the one that is most impressive, in your opinion, in terms of the amount of evidence that's left behind and what it's leading us to understand about our history?
Well, I would say ancient Egypt is possibly the most important in terms of actual grand scale, because of course you have the pyramids of the Giza Plateau. You have subterranean chambers that at Saqqara. You have all these incredible works in very hard stone that could not have been achieved by the dynastic Egyptians with their Bronze Age technology. So again, Egypt is a country where the history is much longer than what we've been told, and there was clearly a very advanced technological civilization that existed there prior to the dynastic people. The dynastic people show up there about 5,000 years ago and discover these things and then adopt them and rename them. And then in Peru, of course, we have megalithic works attributed by the or to the Inca, which could not have been made by the Inca because they as well were a Bronze Age people. So that's my ongoing fascination is uncovering the physical evidence of very advanced civilizations that are not recognized by conventional scholarship.
Mhm. And after looking at these origins and these ancient civilizations, which one do you think is the first one? Do you think it's in Mesopotamia or is it before that? Do you think there are other locations in? I mean, there's been a lot of new evidence about some objects that have been discovered that date back to 200 million years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
do you think that what is the original civilization? Do you think it goes way further than Mesopotamia?
Yeah, oh, definitely, at least twice as far, because we know there were a series of cataclysmic events that happened between 13,000 and 12,000 years ago that would have disrupted any civilization on the planet. And that's why, as well, at these megalithic sites, we see evidence of extreme damage, not from local tribal people or an invading army, but cosmic events, possibly solar flares that struck the planet. And so I think we're looking at structures that are at a minimum 13,000 years old that existed at least just before the end of the last ice age. So that makes civilization at least twice as old as what we've been taught.
That's incredible. That's incredible. What do you think that says about our genetic origins or ourself as a human race?
Well, it simply tells us that we're missing extraordinary parts of history, again, not recognized by standard scholarship. Why they're trying to still cover it up, I don't understand, because it's clear that the dynastic people could not have built the Great Pyramid. It's too big, it's too complicated. It involved moving 2.5 million multi-ton blocks in order to construct it, and that's just a small
Right.
example. So,
Hmm.
the ongoing question is who did this work? And I think it was at least four different very advanced civilizations located in different parts of the world.
In the world. Okay. And are we looking at off-planet civilizations as well? Does that come into the equation, or are we only looking at the Earth?
I'm very open-minded as regards to that. So it was either a series of advanced civilizations that were Earth-based, such as the quote-unquote Atlanteans, as an example, or it was visitors from somewhere else who came and decided to occupy our Earth and build these incredible megalithic stoneworks, and then for some reason left them behind. Whether they were destroyed or whether they decided to leave on purpose is unknown. But I'm very open to the possibility of extraterrestrials having been at least partially responsible for this work.
Yes, interesting. Carrie Collins says, I believe many, if not all, ancient structures were designed to work dimensionally with the Earth's energy grids. Have you seen that, Brian? Have you seen that some of these structures fall energetically in some grid on planet that helps, their development, or do they interact with those grid lines?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, the Giza Plateau is at the geographic center of the planet. It's exactly in the middle of the landmass of all the continents when you look at the world. So clearly there seems to have been an energy grid system going north, south, east, and west there. There's evidence that the complex at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku as well that was an energetic complex of some kind, because it incorporated two different types of stone. One was red sandstone, which is neutral in terms of energy, but then the other material is called andesite, which is very active electromagnetically, even to this day. So I think, I think definitely there's a pattern you see, as well as all the so-called pyramids you see in Central America. They seem to be on some kind of grid. Whether all of these were interconnected, I don't know, but Native people have had a tendency in the past of being very sensitive to energetic conditions, and so I would believe that they would build these structures on energetic grid system of some kind based on the natural properties of our planet.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, I honestly can't wait for your presentation. I think it's going to be amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about what your presentation is going to be about?
Yeah, basically evidence of lost ancient high technology existing in different locations. That's the focus of most of what my work has been. So we'll cover topics such as Egypt, Peru, Bolivia, Lebanon, Jordan, Easter Island, and other locations that I visited more than once in order to be able to show you a pattern of ancient activity that defies normal scholarship.
Wow, that's incredible. We have another question from the audience. Damien asks in regards to the hidden pyramids in Antarctica. Have you come across that?
I've heard recently a lot of information about that. It's very strange that Antarctica is off limits to the general public. I mean, you're not allowed to go there and go to some of these sensitive locations. A lot of world leaders in the last few years have gone there, including people from the Vatican for some reason. So obviously there's more than simply scientists down there measuring snowfall and counting penguins. There has to be a lot of secret information, secret study that's been going on there for quite a long time. There's some that also believe that actually Atlantis was Antarctica, that the whole planet actually shifted on its axis at one point and buried what was a temperate area and turned it into instant subarctic conditions. So yeah, a very intriguing location.
Yes, so much to learn. And what do you think about the magnetic pole shifts? Have you looked at that, and what's responsible for those shifts?
I think it's actually physical shifts of the poles that happened over the course of time. The last one being around 13,000 years ago, that the planet physically shifted, and that would account, for example, why millions of woolly mammoths have been found in Siberia, flash frozen. I mean, that would have to be an incredible event that happened that shifted the axis of the Earth. And of course, the energetic lines of the Earth are constantly constantly move, like they're moving right now. So what that'll wind up if that'll wind up creating problems in the future for us, I'm not sure. But the Earth is a very dynamic blue ball, and all sorts of nothing is constant on this planet. Everything is always shifting, whether slightly or dramatically. So it's a great world to live on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian, after all this incredible research that you've done, how do you see our role now in history? Let's look at the entire historical timeline. How do you see our role as a human race now? What is our responsibility to this earth? Do you feel that, there's things that should change, or what do you think after looking at this bigger picture?
I think we're in an age of rediscovery. We're rediscovering our past. So again, we've been given a limited timeline of civilization of 5,000 to 6,000 years, starting probably in Sumeria. I think that was the beginning of a renaissance of cultures. I think our planet was devastated by external forces, and so we're in the process now. Thankfully, we have science and ways of travel, ways of measuring things with apps, etc. But we're rediscovering the fact that our history is much, much longer than what we've been taught. That it wasn't cave people to begin with, and then living in villages, and then developing society. But we've been going through a series of peaks and or crests and troughs in terms of social, not physical evolution, but social evolution. That we rise to a high point, and then we crash, and then we have to rebuild. And I think that's been going on for a very, very long time.
Yes, I see that as well. I think it's natural, I believe. I believe it's natural cyclical patterns. Do you think it's natural, or do you think it's induced by something external?
I think
Perhaps?
it's a natural cyclical pattern that happens approximately every 13,000 years, that we're visited by some kind of series of cataclysmic activities that drop us down from a high to a low, to reconfigure ourselves again and rebuild ourselves. And I simply, the general public is waking up to this. I wish that academia would admit that they're not covering the entire historical record that we are exposing.
And what do you believe is the reason for that?
Um, in some societies, it's about belief systems. In some societies, it's about control of information. In some societies, it's simply denial that there has ever been anything greater than us, which is a very arrogant statement. So it's a very complex issue, but I think it's being done to some degree on purpose, and in other areas simply because they don't want to expose themselves to a greater reality of the nature of who we were, who we are, and what we can become.
Very interesting. Wow. Well, there are so many questions, and I cannot wait to see your presentation, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us. And to everybody watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Please do join us this coming weekend, the 17th to the 18th at the Higher Self Expo. We're going to be doing some very exciting gathering event at the end of the event as well. So please do come join us and have your questions and learn with us. Thank you for being here. Goodbye.